All right, 2-point perspective like we talked about, okay? And I'm going to write my rules up here. I want you to write them as well, okay? So the first thing that we have, and we've already started this, but the first thing that we have are our horizon line, okay? And what we talked about was that horizon line is our eye level. So if the horizon line cuts through your building like this, it appears like our eye level is cutting through that building. Okay? What we also have with 2-point perspective is 2 vanishing points. Okay, and if you can see this, I don't know if you can or not, right there I've labeled that one VP1, the one on the left. I've labeled this one over here VP2. Okay? Okay? The next thing that we have vertical lines. Okay, so with this first building, we started with this main corner right here, this vertical line. Okay? And the next thing that we put in were perspective lines. Okay, so these were the top lines going to our vanishing points. And then to finish off our building, we had to add another vertical line on each side of it, right, to determine how wide our building was going to be. Okay, so once you get these two done, you're just kind of going back and forth between your vertical lines and your perspective lines. And that just depends on, you know, what your building is going to be like. Okay. So on the back side of our worksheet, again, we've got these kind of step-by-step how to make a city, and we're going to kind of go through the same thing as what's on our sheet here. Okay. So again, you've got your triangle. Okay. And to make a perfect vertical line, I'm going to line it up with either the top or the bottom of the sheet, depending on which way yours is going. Mine's at the bottom right now. Okay, so I'm going to line it up with the bottom of the sheet. And I'm going to draw a vertical line right in here. And you got to make sure that your triangle doesn't move like mine just did. Okay. I'm going to draw a vertical line right in there. Okay. And you'll get to hear Byron blowing his nose on the video too. That's all right. Okay? All right. So what do I do at this point, Mr. Brett? You're exactly right. The vanishing point lines or the perspective lines, because like I said, we just kind of go back and forth between these two rules, vertical lines and perspective lines. So what I'm going to do up here, I'm going to draw this to my vanishing point, and watch this. When you run into another building, what you don't have to do is you don't have to draw all the way through it, because if you do, you're going to have to erase that anyway. Okay? And I'm going to draw this over here. And again, I'm drawing lightly. I'm going to draw it all the way down just because I don't know how wide I want my building to be yet. Okay? And then once I determine how wide I want it to be, maybe I don't want it to be a real wide building. Maybe I want it to be fairly skinny. I'm going to take and put my other vertical line on the back side of that building. Okay? Dadgummit. So now at this point, all I have to do is erase those leftovers. And there's actually one more thing that I need to do that I didn't do in the first building. Okay? So I'm going to erase this leftover line here. Leftover perspective line. And I'm going to erase the horizon line where it cuts through my building. Okay? Now the last thing that I have to do to make this building look like it's actually sitting on the ground and not like going underneath the sidewalk is I have to do something that I didn't do on this building, because this building we already came down to the corner. Okay? The bottom of the building needs to go to the vanishing points as well. So it does go to my second vanishing point, but what it does not do is it doesn't go to my first one. Okay? So right down here in this corner, I'm going to line it up, draw this to my vanishing point. So it almost makes this little alleyway between the buildings right there. Okay? So what I want you to do is just add a few more buildings in here, just kind of using the same technique. Okay, and you can add them right next to each other if you want to. They don't have to have a gap in between. They can be butted up right next to each other. Now if they're right next to each other and there's no gap between the buildings, you don't have to draw it back to your vanishing point over here. Okay? Okay? Kind of practicing making a few extra buildings. You can make them really small. If you make them really small, it's going to appear like these are like some skyscrapers, and the building down lower that you're creating is like a really small shop. Okay, so I got like a really small little building right here, a little squatty building. So again, we're just going between vertical lines and our perspective lines every time. Vertical lines, perspective lines. From the top and the bottom of our buildings. And again, if your building gets cut in half with the horizon line, it's okay. Just erase that horizon line where it goes through your building. You can put buildings behind other buildings as well. Just remember, the closer they are to us, the larger they're going to appear. So if you put something way off in the distance, it should look smaller in comparison to the stuff closer to us. Okay, so regardless of where you're at, what I want you to do right now is just pause for a minute. Okay? Pause for a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to put in a sidewalk and a street. Okay? Sidewalk and a street. So to do this, it's really pretty easy. You got to think about what the sidewalk looks like in comparison to where the buildings are at. So the sidewalk usually is going to come down in front of the buildings right here like this. Okay? So I'm just lining up with my vanishing points, like so. And then here is the trick to making this look like a flat sidewalk, okay? And to make it look like it's actually dimensional too. One thing I'm going to do right here is I'm going to put a tiny vertical line right there at the corner, like that. See that tiny little line? Okay? Yeah, I'm making a curve basically. And I'm going to make a square curb because that's normally what you see in the city, and it's a lot easier to draw. I mean, you could make it rounded, but that's a whole lot more to deal with. So on this side, I went back to this vanishing point over here, the first one on the left. And on this side, I'm going to take it over here to the one on the right. And you just got to make sure that it's nice and lined up. Okay? So give me a thumbs up when you got that. Okay. Now to actually put the blocks in, the sidewalk blocks, this is where it gets a little bit challenging and you have a little bit of problems a lot of times because kids will put them in and they don't draw to their vanishing points, so their sidewalks look like they're at like a slope like that. Okay. So to actually make this look like our sidewalk is laying flat and it's actually in perspective, what we do is we always line up with our vanishing point. So what I'm going to do is I'm lining up to this vanishing point over here, the one on the right, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and draw in this side of my sidewalk. And the whole time I'm going to be lined up to that vanishing point over there on the right, okay? So here in the front, these sidewalk blocks are going to be a little bit bigger, and each time I draw a line, I'm lined up to that vanishing point. Okay? And the further back in space you go, the less room or the less distance you leave between these lines. Okay? So you can see they're starting to get a little bit shorter. We're going to do the same thing on the other side too. I'm going to line up with my left vanishing point. And I'm going to start drawing these sidewalk blocks in. Okay. And you can kind of see how those start to get. As you get further back in space, they should get closer together and get a lot smaller. And we'll see how that looks here in just a little bit. Okay, you can start to see them getting a little bit smaller.